Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today, I have one heck of a good upload to share with you. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yeah, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? All right, guys, this week is going to be full of some very exciting stuff. I talked to Brad today. Brad is going to be on in the next couple of days, no sooner than Friday, but he just shared with me a absolutely mind-blowing experience that he did not have himself, but information that he shared on this channel actually was the cause and effect of this experience that he's going to share with us. An experience that I have never, ever even thought about being possible. It really blew me away. No pun intended. And when you hear it, you are going to realize why I said that joke. Also, I'm going to be interviewing Jane. She's got some very interesting stuff coming out of Connecticut. Then a good friend of mine, Jimmy Petnito, Mr. Haunted. He just wrote his first book by himself called Mr. Haunted Origins. Now, if you don't know who he is, well, he is in the movie Hostage of the Devil about Father Malachi Martin. He's interviewed in that movie. He also was the videographer and photographer for the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine. And just really lived an exciting life in the paranormal. So yeah, really interesting stuff that's going to be hitting the channel real quick. I'm going to share some crazy information with you guys right now. I'm going to give you guys a warm up on a upload that is going to be coming up this week because there's a lot of information to share. So I kind of just want to give you a quick summary of what is going on, but it is mind blowing. And I have the skinny. I have the real skinny on this. So let's get into that. All right. So I was just talking to Brad. Like I said, he was giving me the rundown of what he had heard. And his most recent interview was a direct cause and effect to this. And I can tell you what, I have never heard of such an amazing experience ever. But I shared this information with him and he went quiet. Now, what I'm going to share with you quickly is just a kind of brief rundown. And then the next day or two will be the upload. But I found this awful interesting because I've said it for a couple years now that there, according to the Sumerian and Anunnaki, there was a dog-headed race of aliens. along with the Draco, the Gray, etc. That doesn't mean they came from outer space. They could have came from dimensional. We don't know. But Harvard has acknowledged that. Now, in this book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, after looking into the Tic Tac phenomena, Axelrod and his other researchers experienced some strange things. His family, Jonathan Axelrod's family, actually experienced dogmen well before there was YouTube channels talking about dogmen. Harvard researchers suggest aliens may live among us, underground or on the moon. A recent report of unidentified anomalous phenomenon, commonly called UAPs and formerly referred to as UFOs, has brought more eyeballs to the possibility of extraterrestrial life. While a long-awaited government report issued earlier this year found no evidence of aliens or extraterrestrial intelligence, as reported by the Associated Press, two professors from Harvard University and a colleague at Montana Technological University suggest humanity may just be looking in the wrong places. Instead, reality could be something similar to science fiction movies like the 1988's They Live, and where special glasses allow man to see the aliens who have disguised themselves as humans and live in plain sight. Roddy Piper movie. UAP may reflect activities of intelligent beings concealed in stealth here on Earth, underground, and or in near environs like like the moon, and or even walking among us, passing as humans, wrote Tom Loomis and Brandon Case of Harvard's Human Flourishing Program and Biological Anthropology professor Michael P. Masters of MTU in a report this month. Although this idea is likely to be regarded as skeptical by most scientists, such are the nature of some UAP that we argue this possibility should not be dismissed and instead deserves genuine consideration in the spirit of optimistic and openness. Humility and openness. Their writings make case for scientific openness to conceal earthly explanations. For UAPs argue that too often scientists and others try to put UAP in two categories, human-made and extraterrestrial, some akin to ancient alien civilizations elsewhere in the universe. While those explanations are probably more likely to be true than lunar alien civilizations, the researchers said, but that's no reason to discount it entirely. Such theories are far-fetched on their face. We entertain them here because some aspects of UAP are strange enough that they seem to call for unconventional explanations. That's an article that was on June 13th. Here's another article. Crypto-aliens. Harvard studies claim extraterrestrials from outer space are living among us as humans. A Harvard University study suggests that alien beings termed crypto-terrestrials might live covertly among human beings on Earth. These entities could exist underground, on the moon, or disguise themselves as humans. The study explores various forms of crypto-terrestrials and calls for open-minded consideration despite skepticism. The paper is pending per review, continuing the intrigue about extraterrestrial life. I have that paper, and I will be sharing that in the next couple of days. The long-standing fascination with extraterrestrial life has taken a new turn with recent study from Harvard University suggesting that alien beings could be living covertly alongside with humans on Earth. Despite decades of scientific inquiry into the existence of alien life form. Definitive answers remain elusive. A new paper emerging from Harvard's University Human Flourishing Program delves into the realm of crypto-terrestrial beings. These entities, often associated with unidentified aerial phenomenon, might be concealed underground or on the moon, or even integrating into human society. According to the study, these crypto-terrestrials could manifest in various forms. Jeff, what does this have to do with Dogman and Bigfoot? Well, you'll see. Human crypto-terrestrials, descendants of an ancient human civilization that once thrived but now exists in a diminished state. Nope, not Dogman there, but right here. Hominid or theropod crypto-terrestrials, non-human civilizations, potentially evolved from terrestrial animals, adapt to stealth and concealment. What do Bigfoot and Dogman have in common? Well, they're hairy, they're monsters, and they are quick and very good at concealment. They're non-human, and they do resemble terrestrial animals. And let me tell you, that paper goes deep, guys. My brain is honestly blown. Former extraterrestrial or extratempestrial crypto-terrestrials, beings originating from outside of Earth or from a distant future assimilated into our environment. Magical crypto-terrestrials, entities with mystical attributes akin to folklore creatures like fairies and nymphs, interacting with the human world in a non-technological way. The study acknowledges skepticism within the scientific community, but calls for open mind considering their findings. Notably, the paper is awaiting preview to validate the claims. Earlier reports have surfaced regarding the alleged concealment of large unidentified flying objects by the government, underscoring ongoing public intrigue and debate surrounding the existence of extraterrestrial life. As scientific exploration continues, the quest for understanding whether we are truly alone in the universe remains a compelling and unresolved mystery. Well, here's something. I don't think we are alone in this universe. And just by being a believer in, or not even a believer, a knower in the Dogman, in Bigfoot, we are now acknowledging that we are not. These creatures are not from this earth. I do really am starting to believe that. Now, I'm not saying they're from outer space. There may be. Scientists have already proven portals. Scientists have already proven a dimension aside of ours. Look it up. Just because a portal opens does not mean that's magic. I'm looking at my door. All a portal is a door. My door is not magic. Sorry about that. It is 1 o'clock in the morning and people drive like idiots around here. I apologize. But my door is not magic. It opens and closes. Magnetic forces have power and could open portals to an alternate dimension where these creatures may come from. We don't know. But for so many people to see them, not just in this decade or this era of time, but time past, time immemorial, means that they are real. People were talking about these things 1,000 years ago, and we're still talking about them. As children who have not seen a horror movie, we envision Bigfoot. We envision Dogman. It's ingrained in our psyche for a reason. For a reason. Because civilizations before us have fought in these creatures, have coexisted with these creatures for so long. So, couple of really good things coming up. I wanted to share that with you guys. Let's jump into some encounters. Today's first experience. This is an experience from a friend of mine, which I will be sharing through his point of view. To give a little background info, my dad and I never saw eye to eye. We always got into arguments about small things that impacted our relationship. Eventually, our mom would make us socialize, and we set up a 3-day camping trip to a beautiful forest with lots of mountains and fishing lakes. We have a few things in common, and one of those is fishing. We were certain that these lakes had some large fish. We said our goodbyes and set out for camp. It took us roughly 5 hours to get there, but when we did, we were in awe of the scenery. It looked like it had not been touched by humans at all. It had beautiful flowers and mountains, just like the images. We soon walked down to the lake that we had seen and started fishing. We caught a big bass and planned to eat for lunch. We got back to camp, set up our camp in a clearing, built the tent, set up a fire, and had the truck 20 feet away. We started preparing dinner, the bass, when we noticed the woods were silent. We thought it was because that we were here and continued on. When dinner was ready, we dug in, and we were very exhausted and hungry from all the fishing a few hours before. It was delicious. After that, we talked for a while. My dad even told me a few stories from his childhood. It was entertaining. Soon, the sleep got to us, and we headed for our tents. It took us about 5 minutes to pass out. In the morning, we set out to a certain place in the woods that had lots of deer. We were amazed when we saw at least 5 deer in one spot. We ended up shooting 2 of them and planned on eating them for dinner. After a long day of hunting, we headed back to camp. The woods were now noisy this time compared to the night before. We cooked and ate the deer. It was delicious. We packed up the rest in a cooler. We soon got into our tents for sleep. It was around midnight or so. I woke up to a sound of footsteps a few yards from the tent. I looked and saw that my dad was awake as well. We were groggy and grabbed our gun to try and scare or kill the thing that was preventing us from a peaceful sleep. We soon found where the noise was coming from and started heading in that direction, shining our flashlights in that direction of the sound. We saw nothing at first, but then our eyes started to make out a mass of fur. Then it was moving. We aimed our guns and shot at it. The sound of the gun was deafening. All of a sudden, it whipped around and revealed itself to us. At first, it looked like a wolf, but I started to notice strange things about it. It had missing hair. It looked too muscular to be a normal wolf. Its eyes had this reddish-yellow tint. All of a sudden, it stood on its hind legs and howled at us. The sound was unnatural. Then it started running at us. My dad, without warning, picked me up and bolted toward camp. I looked behind him, and to my horror, it was following us, running on 2 legs. It felt like forever, but we finally made it back to camp. We just hopped in the truck, and thank God Dad had the keys in his pocket. We threw ourselves in the truck, and Dad floored it. We saw it chase us. We even tried to throw things at this creature. We sped until we saw a hotel and stopped. We rushed inside, paid for a room, and slept. Only it took forever for both of us to fall asleep. In the morning, we went back to the camp. We found that all of our stuff had been destroyed. Luckily, the important stuff wasn't touched. Just the tent was destroyed. We packed up and sped out of there. When we got home, we said that it wasn't as we hoped. We never talked about that night since, but luckily, me and my dad don't fight as much anymore, and we talk a lot now. We have not told anyone about this in fear of being made fun of. All I know is what I encountered that night was not normal. Some things look like a dream, but in reality, turn out to be a nightmare. Today's second encounter. Let me start off with the first experience with this being. My friend and I were on our way back to my house when I turned down the road that I live on. A few feet down the road, which I actually ended up getting stuck in the snow in that exact spot twice about a year after this. We both saw a pair of orangish yellow eyes. Now living in Indiana, covered in cornfields in both directions as far as the eye can see, I think it's an animal, so I start to slow down. The eyes are not moving like normal animals do. They usually scurry away or at least turn and disappear into the corn. Now the closer I got, I cannot describe how I could see the details of it because it was so dark. It completely lacked all light. My headlights were not illuminating this thing at all, but basically it looked like a crouched person, almost completely bony, but somehow still huge. At this point, we were pretty close, so I sped up, thinking some Jeeper Creeper shit is going to happen. I take off in my car. As we pass the being staring directly into the eyes to see what it was, it disappeared like smoke. I look at my buddy. You saw that, right? And every time we talk, it comes up. The next experience was a week later. The next time I saw this entity, I was near my road, 5 miles from my home. The same orange eyes. It was walking across the road from right to left toward someone's yard. And when I say walking, I mean on all fours. It was completely black and huge. It had a tail. It was probably 3 feet long. As it was passing from the right side of the road to the left, it stopped in the middle of the road. Mind you, I'm driving straight for this thing, 60 miles an hour. I slowed down and stopped on the yellow line in the middle of the road and turned to look at my boyfriend who was in the car. I'm about 20 feet away, so I'm slowing way down so it doesn't completely destroy my car. It just turned and kept walking, but the thing was so damn huge that it glided through the yard. When we passed the home, the dog thing was nowhere to be seen. This house had a security light and is well lit on the outside. No sign of this thing anywhere. The next time it was seen was by my boyfriend. This was 2 to 3 weeks after the initial incident. He was outside smoking a cigarette on my cabin's porch. It's just a cabin we use to store our pool stuff in. He sees the entity standing this time at the edge of the property, taller than the corn that was standing next to. It was the end of August, so the corn was pretty high at this time. It stood there, the same orange eyes, watching my boyfriend. He eventually ran into the house. The next occurrence happened back in 2017. I've never shared this because every time I say an experience, it feels like it's going to come back, like it knew I was talking about it. Almost as if talking about it gave it some power or energy. I don't know. The next incident was not me. I only had the 2 initial. I got a call from my friend the other night, the same friend who had seen it with the first time I saw it. He was frantic. He screamed, "Cat, I saw it again. I saw it again." I immediately knew what he was talking about and asked him where it happened. He told me he was driving back home because of construction on the back roads back home, because of construction on the main highway. So as he's driving, this tall black figure glides across the road, and he's watching it move. It gets to the corn and disintegrates. It turns into smoke and travels into the cornfield. He watched the smoke dart through the corn. So, can someone tell me that I'm not psycho? I have not seen this entity since 2017, and I don't want to see it again because of the overwhelming fear of just domination or the devil. I'm not religious by any means. This thing reminds me of something I saw when I was playing with a Ouija board many times before while I was in high school. It starts with the letter Z, referring to Zozo. I saw it standing by the foot of my bed and other places in my house, but it gave me the feeling of just pure dread and death. Everything negative. I'm not sure if they are connected or not. I don't believe they are. I doubt, honestly, but the feelings are the same. All right, today's third encounter. I shared this on Saturday. I actually said it Saturday night that I considered this to be one of the most terrifying experiences I shared that night. My granddad told me this experience while I was staying at his place a couple years back. I don't remember how it came up exactly. It was so odd and out of the blue. I was taken back, so I wrote down all the details that I could remember after the fact, so it's not a word-for-word transcription, but it'll suffice. Anyway, back in the 60s, my granddad, my dad's side, was drafted into the Army for Vietnam. He gets discharged in late 72 and drifts apart from his war buddies except for one. They lived remarkably close to one another in the state of Washington, and both exhibited some serious post-war PTSD. Therefore, they both decide to go on a hunting trip together around the autumn season of 73 to try and find healing or closure post-war. As he tells it, he would always hunt for deer in the woods behind his house, and in those days, his home was more of a cabin with the basic necessities. It's probably late afternoon in rural Washington, and anyone who has been in the Pacific Northwest knows how thick and dense the foliage and trees are, not to mention the fog. You can't see far ahead of you. Sight lines become blurred, sounds around you become amplified. This sense of isolation causes your blood pressure to rise. My granddad and his friend from Nam are both hunting off trail, tying bright markers on tree branches as they move through the underbrush so they don't get lost. Suddenly they hear a sound. It's this blaring sound of a horn. It was so loud, it causes both of them to become disoriented. My granddad recalls falling to his knees, hands on his ears, screaming, feeling his throat moving air, but yet not hearing it. The sound doesn't seem to have a direction. The sound is all-encompassing. It's everywhere. The ground is shaking, and like a bad cliche, as soon as it started, it stopped, dissipating in an instant. They both are kneeling there, stunned, their ears ringing badly. They can't hear their own voices. Their mouths move, but nothing happens. As the sun sets, they begin to head back, obviously spooked beyond belief. As their eardrums are shot, they scribble notes to each other on a notepad as they hike back to my granddad's cabin. As they're heading back, they see something hanging behind a tree up ahead on the trail. Its outlines are blurred, but as it floats, the best way my granddad described it to me, towards them, it's revealed. It wasn't like looking in a mirror per se, but this creature, my granddad felt it. The thing was blurry and furry, but my granddad, in his early 30s at that time, said that he saw himself as an old man with a white beard, frail, sunken eyes. He had to squint, but his facial features were the same. His friend, however, had a bullet hole in his head. The figure then morphed into black, an eternal void, death. The early evening pinkish-orange sun rays just ended when they reached the blackness. They panicked at this point, running backward into the woods, screaming like madmen. As darkness fell, they decided to keep going, refusing to camp in the woods. When recounting this experience for me, my granddad, never overly religious, said, "I don't know what the hell that thing was, but I know for sure it was not from Earth. What still bothers me is that I never saw what it actually looked like. I thought after the fact that it may manifest into Satan because it was evil. And I tell you, I saw true evil in people during the war, but this thing, I don't know. It was something else. It was an evil being. And if I would have gotten closer, well," he trailed off there, but his uncomfortable, haunting glance practically finished the rest. After sprinting for a few miles, their flashlights luckily illuminating the trail markers, they reached the cabin, and night sky completely moonless. They anxiously stayed in the cabin until sunrise, loaded their hunting rifles next to them. At all times, the windows and doors were locked, blinds were shut, and no lights on. If that thing was still out there, their wooden door wouldn't have stood a chance. Their anxiety-filled pacing must have made time slow. At one point, they broke down and began praying, neither man ever religious. Remind you that these two are battle-hardened Vietnam vets, both saw extreme combat. They may have PTSD, but for something to scare them to this degree, yeah, it bothers you, doesn't it? Personally, it makes my skin crawl. Yet, with this said, no other strange experiences or encounters happened. That night, or ever again at my granddad's, he moved shortly thereafter to a different town in Washington, and promptly met my grandma. He refuses to this day, nearly 50 years later, to step foot into any forest. Sadly, my grandfather said that the thing he saw with his friend in the woods that night was bad, but an accurate omen of their lives. My granddad has been struggling with alcoholism his entire life. Even today, he's had a liver transplant, but still drinks daily. His friend, however, took his own life in 75, a bullet to the head. He couldn't handle his own personal demons. Perhaps if there had been proper mental health services back then, things would have turned out differently. Or if they hadn't run into whatever that creature was. Today's fourth experience. This happened August 12th of 2020. And I scribbled down as many details as I could on scrap piece of paper while in my car at the time. I had taken a drive through Wyoming and then took the Mirror Lake Scenic Byway back down to Utah. Mirror Lake Highway is beautiful, and being a weekday it was not crowded at all, so I took my time to enjoy it. One of the pull-offs on the road is the Slate Gorge Overlook. There is a short trail that leads to the overlook, and you can then look down into the gorge and see the Provo River. No one was there, so I took a seat and let my mind wander. I'd been there for maybe 20 minutes or so when I saw something come from behind the woods. I was excited, thinking maybe it was a moose or an elk. I always like seeing those. But what appeared was what looked like a hunched-over person that was sort of half walking, half crawling rather slowly. While that in of itself is weird, it's even stranger that it looked like a person wearing a really heavy, crudely fashioned gray fur coat with a hood. Only one that was several sizes too small. It really didn't make sense to me. It was probably 7 to 8 feet in height and thin, I'd say 200 pounds or so. Also, it was around 80 plus degrees out with temperatures nearing 90 in the valley. So it was not cold in any means. While on the sides are kind of steep, you can get down into the gorge without too much of an issue. I kind of thought that maybe it was someone doing TikTok video or something like that, but I didn't see anyone else around filming. Eventually, whatever it was made it to the water, stuck its head in for a drink. As it looked like it was finishing, a group of people were coming up onto the overlook, and they had kids with them making a bunch of noise. It can echo through that gorge a bit, and the creature/person heard it and took off incredibly fast on all fours, pretty uneven ground. Now I'm not sure what I saw. In all likelihood, it could have been a person getting in touch with nature and wearing a homemade costume. But the way they moved seemed unnatural, especially when the noise spooked it and it took off running. I'm sort of conflicted between a person in a fursuit or an actual cryptid. Both seem plausible, and I don't want to immediately jump to conclusions on what it could be. I've always been into Bigfoot. and it didn't remind me of anything Bigfoot related I had ever seen. So I'm pretty much ruled that out. But otherwise, I don't really know. I wish I had thought to bring my phone so I could have snapped a couple shots, but I left it in the center console since I didn't want it going off and spooking and spoiling this quiet time. Excuse me. But I left it in the center console since I didn't want it going off and spoiling the quiet time. Any thoughts? I really don't know much about Utah cryptids, other than there has been Bigfoot and Dogman sightings. So I shared that in the live stream also. And that encounter right there reminded me of this video. Tonight's final encounter. This was around 2015. I'm not sure what month, but it was around 11 p.m. I was driving from my dad's place to my mom's. My dad owned 75 acres of spooky property. We live in the Florida Panhandle. Anyway, I was driving. I had just started down the long driveway when I felt like I was being watched. Not cool, but it happens more often than you would believe. I'm nearing the highway when I see a dark shape at the edge of the woods. Oh well, probably a deer. I shake it off. We have tons of wildlife in the area, from deer to panther to the occasional bear. Then it starts chasing me. Keep in mind that this is somewhat normal. I have tons of weird stuff that happens, and it's not like it was just barreling at me. It just moved after my car, staying at the edge of the woods. So I keep my pace. I turn onto the highway and sped up to 50 miles an hour or so. I keep noticing something in my peripheral, so I slow down and start looking for what it could be. A few yards behind me, I see this huge dog. I grew up with large dogs. My aunt had a St. Bernard mix growing up, and I've had various large dogs. This thing was literally the size of my car. Bears don't chase cars, and we only have black bear, which are kind of docile. Okay, now I am freaking out. I gun it, releasing a long stream of curses and telling my car to get over it. It was a poorly kept 95 Honda Accord. I seemingly couldn't shake it for long. So, in an act of bravery, real stupid, I pull over into a church parking lot, thinking maybe it's some sort of hell beast and it wouldn't come into the light or even onto church property. Well, was I ever wrong? I stopped to get my phone and call my boyfriend. In that period, it catches up and jumps onto my car. I can see it, feel it, hear the metal popping and creaking, the drool splatter on my windshield. I'm screaming. I drop my phone. It jumps onto my car hood, where I get a glimpse of it before it jumps into the cemetery and disappears. Mind you, it's a gated cemetery. It was definitely a dog, built like a Rottweiler/pit bull mix, but darker and much larger. It was solid black with paws the size of dinner plates, its huge head almost the size of my sidecar windows. I don't know why it decided to leave me alone, but it did, and I am thankful. I called my boyfriend crying. He calmed me down, listened, and told me that when I get home, I should take pictures of the car. I did, or at least I tried. By the time I got to my mom's, the only thing left was a single dent in the roof of my car and some faint claw marks that were more like indentations in the metal. Why did this damage disappear? Was it a corporeal creature or a supernatural beast? Thank you for allowing me to share. Bonus encounter. I live on some acreage, and to get home I drive down the main road past some farms, subdivisions, and other acreage. In August of 2014, I was driving home from work at midnight. In one of the ditches, when I was about 500 meters away, my high beams illuminate a wolf's head and eyes. It was moving slightly as though it was eating something or sniffing for something, but my lights did not show what. We have coyote out here. Where we live, and everyone has dogs, but coyote are too cowardly to be this close to the road, and few people let their dogs roam loose at night. Most importantly, it was far too big to be a coyote or a dog. Actually, far too big to be even a wolf. It looked like the size of a bear. As I got closer, it stood up to be the height of a large man, maybe even taller, and moved towards me. At this point, I passed it, doing 100 kilometers, and didn't look back, too scared to try and think about what it really was. The sighting was only 3 kilometers from my house, so I ran inside the moment I pulled into my driveway, fully convinced that I had seen a werewolf. This took place in Alberta, in Strathcona County, which is east of Edmonton. Thank you. All right, folks, what an upload. Some amazing information. I cannot wait. Janie will be doing the interview with Jane tomorrow. That other information I will be sharing. What's today? Monday, Tuesday, probably Wednesday. Then Jimmy Patnito, looking forward to that. Friday, I'll be connecting up with Brad by the earliest. But I will be doing some kayaking on Friday. It's supposed to be in the 70s and nice. So I'm going to take a little Jeff time for a little bit that day. But there will still be uploads. Anyway, guys, thank you for allowing me to share these experiences with you. I hope you enjoyed them as much as I enjoyed sharing them with you. Thank you also for supporting the channel. It is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives people a chance and a place to share their experiences. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this info with them, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.